Hello, my name is Phil Easter, historian and writer from Baltimore, Maryland, also known as the Amazing Memory Man. We're recording tonight on Sunday, May 21st, 2023. This is story number 27 on my YouTube channel, which is Phil Easter, the Amazing Memory Man. Tonight, I'd like to honor America's law enforcement officers, the brave men and women throughout our country at many levels, whether it be local, state, or federal, who work so hard to protect us from so many criminals in our nation. It was exactly 5 years ago today, a very sad incident happened in the area where I live, in Baltimore County. A police officer named Amy Caprio, she was responding to a burglary in a certain neighborhood, and when she was investigating, the two young culprits were in a car, and a 16-year-old driver drove into her and killed her that day. 5 years ago today, May 21st, 2018. This was a very major incident in the news in the Baltimore area for some time, and they were later captured and went on trial and were found guilty after some time. But it was just a terrible thing. This young lady, police officer, just 6 days before what would have been her 30th birthday, she was killed in the line of duty. Amy Caprio, one of many law enforcement officers throughout the years, thousands across our country who gave their lives in the line of duty of service to the community they lived in. We have seen in recent years many people who are very disrespectful to law enforcement officers, more than ever before in the last several years, it seems to be. And personally, I just think that's awful, and it should not be. Most of the time, they make very good decisions. There are some individual cases of police brutality, of course, that does occur from time to time. But the overwhelming majority of the times a police officer makes an arrest or has to use force, even lethal force, against a criminal, most of the time it is justified. Most of the time they're doing so to protect themselves and the public. Again, some people of certain political persuasions like to point out the times of some police brutality, and they act like it's going on much of the time. They exaggerate the situation to suit their own political or philosophical gains. And I think that is just terrible, because most of the men and women who serve are very brave and work under very difficult conditions. Another example was what happened 7 years ago in 2016 in Dallas, Texas. On July 7th, 2016, there was a Black Lives Matter march in Dallas, and they requested police protection for their march, and they were given police protection. And the rally, for the most part, was very peaceful. But as it was breaking up towards the end, one man with a rifle, I think it was from a nearby garage, is what I heard on the news reports, he shot 12 officers, of 5 of whom died. 12 officers shot, 5 of whom were killed. Now, except for Dallas area directly, it did make national news for a few days, but I don't hear any follow-up reports all these years later. I would think some reporters would be interested to know how the 7 officers are recovering, and also, check on the families of those 5 who died. Perhaps in Dallas, the local TV stations have covered this more often. I would think they have, but I live here in Baltimore, and I watch the national TV news just about every night, and I often hear about cases of those cases of police brutality that most people would agree were wrong, that are mentioned over and over and over again, yet I never hear about a follow-up report about the officers in Dallas. And 7 years ago is not that long ago. It seems to be a disproportion in how the news media treats some of these stories. It really does. I also remember many years ago a case of here in Baltimore where a police officer was killed on November 18th, 1985. And that was the same night that in Washington, D.C., there was a Washington Redskins football game, and their famous quarterback, Joe Theismann, broke his leg. And of course, that made national news. He was a football player, it ended his career, but just as a comparison, here in Baltimore, a police officer was murdered that same night, of course, just made local news. He happened to have gone to the same high school I went to many years ago. So many officers have been killed in the line of duty throughout our nation's history, but it does seem that in recent years, it's happening more and more. As we come up to this Memorial Day weekend, and soon at the end of May, and I realize that Memorial Day officially is for military dead, but I also can't help thinking of some of these cases of law enforcement officers who died in the line of duty. I think we should be very grateful to those who serve to protect our communities. God bless the men and women of America's law enforcement agencies. This is Phil Easter, the Amazing Memory Man. We'll see you next time. Thank you and good night.